On her first day, the rookie nurse ran into this creepy old dude. He said his back hurt but his hands were sneaking under her skirt. The newbie didn't even notice and kept asking where it hurt. Then the perv had the nerve to grab her waist. "It hurts right here," he said. The nurse, being ticklish, burst out laughing. The old creep grinned, thinking he'd scored, and tried to go lower. Suddenly a cane flew through the air, knocking him down. I walked up scratching my head. Oops, first time using a cane. My bad. I grabbed his phone and saw the pics he'd taken. "You've got some balls, old man," I said, showing him the screen. "Harassing nurses and taking creep shots. Get lost before security calls the cops." The perv was pissed but had to run away. The nurse was confused. Wasn't his back hurting? How's he running so fast? I couldn't believe how naive she was. I showed her the pics and told her she could delete them or call the police. She thanked me awkwardly. Then I remembered my broken foot and yelped in pain. My bandage had come off earlier. The nurse rewrapped it for me, even tying a cute bow. Seeing how sweet but clueless she was, I warned her to watch out for pervs. She pumped her fist, saying she'd punch any creeps she met. Then she got called away to help another patient. Before leaving, she reminded me to come back in a week. I nodded, thinking, in a week. We probably won't meet again. The Ice Age apocalypse was coming in 2 days. 90% of people would freeze or starve. But I'd developed the power to synthesize anything. I could turn soybeans into sprouts or meat instantly. If synthesis failed, I'd get coal instead. So I wasn't worried about surviving the big freeze. In my past life, I wasn't so lucky as a simp. I'd starve myself just to give Rue food. I thought giving her everything would win her over. But she wasn't grateful at all. She even teamed up with another guy to kill me, laughing that simps should hand over all their food. As I lay there bleeding out, I was so pissed. If I could live again, I'd make those two pay. Then I opened my eyes and realized I'd actually gone back in time to 2 weeks before the apocalypse hit. With this rebirth, my right hand started glowing red. I thought I was seeing things, but it wouldn't stop. After I sneezed, the glow turned green and kept changing size. Maybe because of the green light, I suddenly felt like I was gonna pass out. That's when it hit me. In a lot of comics, the main character gets some cheat-like power when they're reborn. I grabbed a kitchen knife and started swinging it around, but nothing happened. My stomach was still growling like crazy. So I opened the fridge looking for a snack, but it was totally empty. I was out of ideas when I noticed some soybeans on the table. They were roasted soybeans I'd bought as a snack before the apocalypse. I figured I'd eat those to tide me over until I could hit up the supermarket. I popped one in my mouth with my glowing green hand. The next second, it exploded. When the smoke cleared, there was a soybean sprout in my mouth. I quickly pulled it out, realizing it had grown from the roasted bean. As the green glow faded from my hand, I suddenly felt energized again. I plucked a pod from the sprout and cracked it open to find fresh soybeans inside. I wanted to investigate more, but getting supplies before the apocalypse was the priority. I headed out to the supermarket, still puzzling over what happened with the soybean. Just then, a familiar voice called out to me. I turned to see Rue, the girl I'd simped for 2.5 years in my past life. Back then, I'd do anything she wanted, even though I knew I was just her backup plan. But I never imagined she'd actually get me killed. I dug my nails into my arm, trying to stay cool. It wasn't time for revenge yet. I had to sort out supplies first. Rue walked up. "What are you spacing out for? I've been calling you forever." My expression changed. "Sorry, I was just thinking how you seem even prettier today." Rue ruffled his hair and invited me to go shopping with him. I instantly refused. I knew she was trying to use me as an ingrate to pay her again. Now I wouldn't be as stupid as I was in the past. I hit up the biggest Walmart in the East, trying to stock up on supplies before the post-apocalyptic world kicks in. I whipped out my phone to look up a survival checklist, but damn, there was so much stuff I needed. Problem is, I only had about 10 grand to my name. That ain't gonna cut it. Just as I was stressing out, I got a text about a loan offer. Light bulb moment. If I'm short on cash, I can just borrow it. So I went nuts and downloaded 108 loan apps, borrowing like crazy. I mean, who's gonna collect when the world ends, right? To haul all this stuff, I used the loan money to buy a fancy pickup truck. I made sure to drive it by Rue to catch her eye. She was shocked to see a broke dude like me in a sweet ride. I fed her some BS about being a secret rich kid just slumming it. I told her my old man made bank doing business in Country M the last couple years, so he tossed some cash my way. Rue's face dropped when she heard that. She said she thought I was ghosting her cause I'd been so cold lately. I smirked and pulled her close, telling her she meant a lot to me. Rue blushed and was about to ask me out for dinner and a movie, but I'd already vanished. I rushed off to load up my supplies. Rue was confused by all the stuff, so I made up some excuse about it being stuff I liked and birthday gifts for her. Told her to sit tight at home. She thinks she's got me wrapped around her finger, but little does she know about my stash. We'll settle out when the world ends. I still gotta figure out who helped her try to off me. Kinda looking forward to the post-apocalyptic showdown. Over the next few days, I hoarded a ton of food and meds like antibiotics. To deal with power outages, I got a generator and enough fuel to last a year. Then I set up my place with its own heating, beefed up the doors and windows, and cleared out a room just for supplies. After getting all that sorted out, there's only one day left before the temperature drops like crazy. Now it's time to check out my powers. I know for sure that just stockpiling stuff won't cut it when doomsday hits. This ability to turn soybeans into plants could be my ticket to staying alive. Now I gotta figure out if it's safe to eat. After wrestling with myself for a bit, I took a spoonful and popped it in my mouth. Tastes just like normal soybeans. Now that I know it's edible, time to experiment with how this power works. So I grabbed the food from the fridge and started testing things out. During all this, I noticed some plants didn't react at all, while others would grow from seeds to full-grown crops like the soybeans did. Some even exploded now and then. When they blew up, they'd turn into this black stuff that looked like coal but was super light. And it burns too, so no worries about staying warm. As I kept messing around, I started to get the hang of how to trigger the power. The key is my mind. If I imagine I'm out in nature, and my body and spirit are part of it, I can shoot out this green light from my hands whenever. I decided to try it on some meat, but no matter how hard I squeezed, nothing happened. Then I remembered I had this red light too, so I started meditating and bam, red light came out. But as soon as the red light touched the meat, it started making this crazy sizzling noise. Freaked me out so bad I dropped it on the floor. I poked it a bit and it felt like it had been cooked, but not normal cooking, more like it was breaking down. Then I had this wild idea. I grabbed some soybeans in my right hand. If the green light with the beans means evolution, and the red light with the pork means breaking down, what if I combine them? Next thing I know, this huge chunk of pork appears in my hand, and the soybeans are gone. Did they fuse with the meat or something? I picked up the meat to check it out. It looked fresh, felt like meat, smelled like meat, the works. I was feeling pretty good, so I tried again, but no dice. Kept failing after that. Oh well, guess I'll have to keep working on it. At least I made some progress today. If I can master this power, I'll be king of this post-apocalyptic world. Then it hit me, food's great and all, but I need something to protect myself too. So I packed everything up quick. Gotta get my hands on some protection before this post-apocalyptic world kicks off. Just then, it started to snow lightly. Looks like winter's finally here. I quickly put on some warm clothes and headed out, but I had no idea where to get a gun. Right at that moment, I spotted a familiar face. With that over-the-top outfit, if I'm not mistaken, it's gotta be Lee, the notorious street thug from our neighborhood. I thought he might know where to score a gun, so I went up and said hi. When I told him I needed a gun, Lee was pretty shocked. Bro, I gotta be straight with you. Guns ain't no joke. I've got connections, but I don't want to get you into trouble. I pushed away his bag and made up some excuse about needing it for self-defense. I told him how I was riding my bike to work recently when this rude dude spat right in my face. When I tried to reason with him, he spat at me again, so I ended up eating him up. As he was leaving, he threatened to get revenge. The next day, he and his buddies ambushed me and roughed me up, saying they'd do it every time they saw me. I've never been so humiliated, so I wanted to get a weapon to protect myself. After hearing my story, Brother Lee got pissed. That guy's got no manners. He put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Don't worry, Brother Lee's got your back. I'll call my guy right now and we'll head out." But we'd have to take the bus cause his Panamera was in for servicing. I pressed the key fob in my pocket and said, "Let's take my car, Brother Lee. It's snowing pretty hard." On the way, Brother Lee said my 700k car was a good deal, but he kept taking selfies for his social media. This new SUV ride's kinda rough though. We soon pulled up at a bar. When the black boss heard I wanted a gun, he looked annoyed. "You came all this way just for a crappy gun?" I thought it was something important. He tossed a gun on the table. 60 grand and it's yours. But I said I wanted one of those long ones with a scope. The black boss was shocked I wanted a sniper rifle. He said he only had handguns, take it or leave it. Brother Lee quickly stepped in to smooth things over. After 2.5 hours of Brother Lee's bullshitting, the black boss was moved by his made-up story. "Man, that's messed up. Your wife ran off with another guy and none of your 3 kids are even yours. That's rough." Although this story is a bit outrageous, the good thing is that the black boss promised to help me get the sniper rifle within a few days and gave me the pistol before he left. Seeing how generous he was, I decided to tell him about the weird weather lately and suggest he stock up on supplies with his brothers. The big boss paused for a sec, then said he got it. They've already got supplies and weapons ready, so they should be good for the early days of the apocalypse at least. Next up was really digging into my powers. Just as I was lost in thought, I suddenly slipped on some ice. I did like 2.5 flips in the air before crashing hard onto the ground. Pretty sure I broke my foot, so I had to ask Brotherly to take me to the hospital. The doc said it was just a regular fracture. They put it in a cast and told me to hang around for an hour before getting my meds. Brotherly said he had some business to take care of and took off, leaving me alone at the hospital. With all the accidents from the sudden cold snap and blizzard, they were putting emergency beds out in the ER hallway. I was anxiously looking around waiting for my meds when this super cute nurse caught my eye rushing around. Overheard her talking to patients and found out she was actually the head nurse. I was impressed someone so young was already in charge. Not only was she talented, but she had a great attitude with patients too. Maybe a bit too trusting though. After she carefully bandaged me up, she told me to come back in a week to change the dressing. But I knew deep down we probably wouldn't meet again. The next day, temps dropped even more. The blizzard shut down work and school nationwide. Officials had no comment. Lucky I stocked up on supplies ahead of time. The chaos outside didn't really affect me, so I didn't have to worry about survival for now. My phone was blowing up with notifications. The usually quiet homeowners group chat was buzzing with everyone talking about the blizzard. This homeowner called Marginal Person caught my attention. He was saying this wasn't just a normal snowstorm, but the start of a post-apocalyptic ice age. I was shocked. How did he know about the apocalypse? Gotta keep an eye on this Marginal Person guy. The group chat quickly turned into an argument, with everyone blaming property management for not clearing the snow. But only I knew this snow was way beyond what humans could handle. This homeowner named Jiang stepped up to organize a snow shoveling crew. I didn't want any part of that though, so I just left the chat. Suddenly I got a message from Rue asking me to run out and buy her food. She even sent a racy pic to convince me. Damn, this chick went all out to make me run errands. So I sent her a message that really got under her skin. Fast forward to day 3 of the apocalypse. In the early days, we still had heating and internet, so life went on as usual for most people. I was just killing time watching videos, but it was getting kinda boring. Plus my leg injury wasn't looking great, it'd probably take months to heal. Then I came across this crazy video of a guy jumping from the 15th floor. When the doctors were stitching him up, they noticed his damaged organs and bones were actually regrowing. I was like, whoa, am I not the only superhuman out there? And this dude can heal himself? Suddenly I had a bright idea. I switched on my green light power and grabbed my broken leg, thinking it might help speed up healing. I kept turning the light on and off for a good 2.5 minutes, but it didn't seem to do jack. I let out a big yawn, feeling super sleepy, and drifted off. In my dream, I was a Native American riding a bighorn sheep across the plains. Suddenly the sheep threw me off and I broke my right foot again, just like before. But then something weird happened. A ewe came over and started licking my wound. I tried to push her away cause it was gross, but she got pissed and picked me up with her super long tongue. Then her tongue started glowing green. I woke up in a cold sweat, totally freaked out by that weird ass dream. Then I noticed my leg was glowing green. I cut off the bandage and holy crap, the broken bone had healed. So wait, does the green light automatically heal me while I'm sleeping? To test it out, I grabbed a knife and made a small cut on my finger. Blood started dripping down. Then I activated the green light and the cut started healing right before my eyes. I was pretty stoked about that. After that I passed out again. Meanwhile, downstairs the HOA guy was clearing snow, planning to widen the roads so people could stock up on supplies. This old dude named Lou took a drag on his cigarette and looked like he had something to say. Jiang was like, "What's up, Uncle Lou?" Lou adjusted his hat and said all serious like, "Word is, a few days ago one of the residents here was hauling a ton of stuff home in a pickup truck every day, like they were moving in." Jiang thought that was normal, maybe just a new neighbor moving in. But Lou pulled his hat down low and said in a cold voice, "Thing is, I saw gas tanks and fireplaces. This don't look like no regular move in, more like they're prepping for winter." So, the twins said the main road was clear. They told everyone to get ready cause they were about to head out to the supermarket to stock up on supplies. While everyone was counting supplies, Uncle Lou came up behind Jiang. "Hey Jiang, what do you think about all this? You reckon it's connected to this natural disaster somehow?" Jiang didn't seem bothered. He said it was just a short snowstorm and it'd be over soon. Even if it doesn't stop, if someone in the neighborhood has a ton of supplies, isn't that a good thing for everyone? Uncle Lou chuckled, "You've got a point there. Youth really does make you sharp." Meanwhile, I was sound asleep when suddenly there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Brother Lee bringing me my sniper rifle, and it was semi-automatic too. Brother Lee said not to mention it and that I should thank myself for telling Lou to stock up early. Then, Brother Lee told me something weird. Apparently, someone cleaned out the big supermarket in the East District overnight. I broke out in a cold sweat. Just like I remembered, it really happened. After Brother Lee left, I got lost in thought. How did they pull that off? In comics and novels, superhumans who could suck everything into a pocket dimension could do it. Could there really be a space manipulator out there? So I decided to take a closer look at my own abilities. Right now, I can react with different ingredients to multiply them. But the success rate is super low. To survive in this post-apocalyptic world, I was determined to figure out how to use it properly today. After 10 hours of research, I finally got the hang of it. Turns out, when using the green light output, its energy isn't constant. Each food needs a different energy level, and if it's off, it fails. This familiar pattern reminded me of that super popular music and dance online game from over a decade ago. If I used up, down, left, and right as energy levels, got each input right, and caught that critical moment, boom. The soybeans in my hand turned into bean sprouts. With plants down, it was time for meat. I kept going based on my previous experience, but it was way harder. After tons of attempts, I finally managed to create a massive chicken leg. But I used up so much energy that I collapsed on the floor, my stomach growling. At least I finally figured out how to synthesize meat. Time flew by and it was already day 4 of the snowstorm. I saw on TV that power and transportation were shutting down all over the world. And according to some insiders in our homeowner group chat, a bunch of tanks and armored vehicles had rolled into the city. Looked like war might break out. I vaguely remembered something like that happening before. Then Jiang piped up again. He suggested that homeowners with extra food donate some to help out others who were struggling. Everyone was buzzing about it, but in the end, the homeowners agreed to the plan. Next, Jiang proposed setting up a temporary homeowner committee to manage the donations and aid distribution. I smirked when I saw that message. This was the same old trick from my past life, just a way to swindle food and supplies from homeowners. By day 5 of this post-apocalyptic mess, temps had plummeted to 40 and the heating was totally shot from the extreme weather. Everyone was scrambling to stay warm however they could. Just like before, things were only gonna get worse. But not for me. I was chilling with an ice-cold Coke and some yummy strawberry cake, playing Monkey God to take the edge off. Then I got a call from a number I didn't know. Turns out it was that temporary homeowner committee asking me to help shovel snow in the parking lot. I was annoyed, but to avoid drama with the neighbors and keep my safe house on the down low, I grudgingly went downstairs to shovel with them. But the snow had completely blocked the first floor. The other homeowners waved for me to help open the door. We all pushed together and forced it open. The freezing air hit us like a slap in the face. Going out in this weather would mean serious frostbite or even freezing to death. Everyone realized that and gave up on the shoveling idea. Just then, some crazy dude volunteered to go out and shovel. I turned around and sure enough, it was Brother Lee. He ignored everyone telling him not to and charged right into the snow, digging away. Brother Lee's hands were moving at lightning speed. In no time, he dug out a big hole in the thick snow. But a second later we heard Brother Lee yelling for help from inside the hole. We quickly dragged him out and slammed the door shut. Poor Brother Lee was shaking like a leaf. I suggested everyone head to the parking garage to check in with whoever was in charge, since there was no way we could clear this much snow by hand. We'd have to wait for it to stop and figure something out then. Soon everyone had gathered in the underground parking lot. Jiang announced this would be the donation and distribution center for supplies. He kept thanking everyone for their cooperation, saying how their generous donations had helped so many struggling homeowners. The homeowners were super happy with how things turned out. But knowing what was really going on, all I could do was laugh to myself. This disaster wasn't stopping anytime soon. It wouldn't be long before they'd all regret this. Just then I spotted that head nurse from the hospital in the noisy crowd. I saw her stumble and almost fall, so I rushed over to catch her. When he recognized me, he was curious about how my leg healed so fast. Not knowing how to explain, I just said everyone's body is different, and I've always been a quick healer. Little Nurse was surprised at first, then started praising me like crazy. To thank Little Nurse for bandaging me up before, I offered to carry her stuff. But as soon as I took it, I was stunned. Her box was super heavy. She explained it was mostly medical supplies for donation. She asked if it was too heavy and offered to take it back, but by then I was too smitten by her cuteness to even notice the weight. She told me not to push myself, and I asked if she'd always been so strong. Little Nurse hemmed and hawed, saying some stuff happened that she couldn't really explain. She changed the subject and asked my name. I'm Han Feng, I'm Jin Shui, nice to meet you. Man, she's so adorable. So we were walking and chatting when suddenly this big dude bumped into her. She fell right on top of me and we had this awkward close encounter. She quickly let go and apologized, but just then Ru showed up behind me and grabbed my arm without a word. Jin Shui saw this and quickly took her stuff back, saying she didn't want to interrupt us. After some small talk, Ru asked if I had any extra food at home that I could spare for her. I smirked and said I didn't have much but I'd share some, though I noticed she still hadn't replied to my message asking her to keep me company. I asked if she wanted to come stay at my place for a few days. Ru looked shocked then pulled away, explaining she thought I meant online companionship. Seeing she wasn't getting it, I turned to leave, but she grabbed my clothes, looking all pitiful and saying I'd changed. You know I take relationships seriously. I don't want people thinking I'm with you for your money, so can you give me some more time? If I hadn't died once before, I might have bought that at. If I wasn't trying to find the guy behind her, I'd rip off that ugly mask of hers right now. Then I had a great idea, why not do like before and let Ru bring that guy to me, instead of looking for him myself. So I promised to bring her food tomorrow, then waved goodbye. Ru thought she had me wrapped around her finger. I just chuckled at that. A couple days flew by, and there I was in my cozy room, chowing down on some juicy grilled meat rice. I didn't give Ru any of the food I promised her. I just ghosted her messages completely. After tons of experiments these past few days, I figured out two things. First, meat doesn't grow infinitely. Second, you can recycle meat over and over just like soybeans. Before, whenever I grew soybean sprouts, I'd use half to grow more sprouts and eat the other half. I tried the same thing with meat and it worked the same way. I ended up with almost a whole beef. This means I can keep recycling and getting fresh meat forever. Looks like my food problems are totally solved now. A few more days went by and the temperature dropped to 42. The TV was saying the whole world was covered in snow and ice, even the oceans were frozen solid. But I knew things were way worse than what the media was saying. Suddenly there was a huge boom outside. I pulled back the curtains and saw an explosion in the city in the distance. Before I could figure out what was going on, hundreds of military choppers flew over me and my phone started blowing up with messages. Looks like all the chaos outside was freaking out the homeowners. They were all gathering in the underground parking garage to trade stuff and food they needed. But some homeowners were trying to rip people off, so there were a bunch of fights breaking out. Right then, there was a notice in the homeowner group chat saying people who needed help could get free supplies in the underground garage. So I had to drag myself downstairs to the garage. If it wasn't to keep up appearances and maybe get some info, I wouldn't have left my warm room. I remember there was a riot in this neighborhood in my past life, but I don't know exactly why it started. My plan now is to scope out the situation. There are tons of people in need here. Just then, some people getting supplies started arguing. Turns out this guy's family had given several big boxes of food before, but now they only got one pack of instant noodles and 3 sausages. Jiang said he'd pay them back double after the disaster, but the guy wasn't having it. Then the people in line behind them started getting all high and mighty, telling the guy to stop fussing and just take the food and go, cause everyone else was waiting to eat too. I just laughed to myself. No way they're getting their stuff back in this situation. I've never seen such shameless people. Brotherly Weekly said hi to me. I asked how he's been doing lately. He said he's okay, just feeling weak and shaky with heart palpitations. Right then his stomach started growling. Turns out he's just been drinking water to fight off hunger these past few days. So this guy wanted to help his neighbors, right? He ended up donating most of his stuff to the committee. But then he ran out of food at home, the snow just wouldn't stop, and the committee only gave out like a tiny bit of supplies. Now he's kicking himself for not keeping more for himself. Suddenly I had this brilliant idea. I told Brotherly I'd give him 4 packs of instant noodles and 2 sausages if he helped me gather intel. Brotherly was stunned at first, then started bawling his eyes out. He was like, "Bro, you're just making up excuses to feed me." Then he patted me on the shoulder and said he'd take care of it, no problem. After we agreed, Brotherly went straight off to get the supplies, leaving the intel gathering to Brotherly. Wait, what? Anyway, this way I didn't have to go out in the cold. I felt a bit bad about taking advantage of my bro, but hey, nothing beats chilling on the couch at home, eating good food and playing games. Just as I was about to head home feeling pretty smug, someone called out to me. Next thing I know, I get slapped across the face. I was like, what the hell? Before I could say anything, Ru goes, "Han Feng, I'm so disappointed in you." Then she starts yelling at me, asking why I didn't reply to her messages. I rubbed my sore cheek, thinking, we haven't even settled our old score, and now you're just slapping me out of nowhere. You think I'm a pushover? Ru kept on ranting, but I held back my anger, sighed, and apologized. Then I told her that the supplies I'd left by my door disappeared while I was getting my keys. Rue asked if I had any food left. I said not much, maybe enough for a few days if I only ate once a day. But Rue was thrilled to hear that. She suggested I eat every other day and give her half my food so we could get through this together. I was shocked. Like, how could she even say that? But I kind of expected it in her eyes. I'm just a tool to use. So I decided to play along. I agreed and told her to come get the supplies that night. Rue left, feeling pretty pleased with herself. When night came, Rue was waiting downstairs, bombarding me with messages. When I didn't reply, she decided to come up herself. But the snow had caused a power outage, so the elevator wasn't working. She had no choice but to slowly climb the stairs for those precious supplies. She was already out of breath after a few floors, since she hadn't eaten in days. After what seemed like forever, she finally made it to my floor. Suddenly, the emergency light above her went out. The sudden darkness freaked her out. Just then I heard some noise from upstairs. The next second, a black garbage bag came falling from above. Before she could react, the bag landed right on her head with a thud. As the lights came on, white powder filled the air. I quickly went over to explain that I'd bumped into the railing and accidentally dropped it. Rue was struggling to clean the sticky flour off herself, muttering about how gross it was. I was secretly pleased this was exactly what I'd prepared for her. Then I handed her a bag of supplies. When she opened it, she found it was full of moldy trash. Even a dog wouldn't eat this stuff. Rue looked totally disgusted. Seeing how much she hated it, I reached out to take the bag back. But to my surprise, she suddenly hugged it tightly to her chest. Who said I don't want it? Watching this, I couldn't help thinking, is this really the goddess I used to chase after so desperately? But Rue couldn't care less about that now. She was busy figuring out how to eat the rotten apples. Then she snatched away the flour bag I was holding too. Opening it, she was thrilled to find it still half full. So she happily headed home carrying half a bag of flour and a bag of trash. But I knew that trash would make her poop more than she ate. And with the weather, she couldn't even shower off all that flour. After getting my revenge on Rue, I started walking home humming a tune. But then I sensed something was off. It felt like someone was behind me. Not wanting to spook them, I walked into the hallway. A second later, a figure appeared in the doorway. As they came in, I grabbed them and pinned them to the ground, ready to attack. But when I saw their face, I froze. It was a purple-haired girl with half-rimmed glasses. I asked her why she was following me, but the purple-haired girl just stared at me silently. I threatened to strip her clothes off if she didn't talk, but she still said nothing. With no choice, I let her go and told her to go home and stop playing pranks. But then she grabbed my hand. After staring at me for 2.5 seconds, she pointed to a room, gesturing for me to follow her. In her room, I saw it was well stocked with even better supplies than I'd prepared. I asked if she knew about the blizzard in advance. She slowly mumbled, "Ice Age. Calculation results." Then she said she'd mentioned it in the group chat before. Turns out she was the one called marginal person. Then, she pulled up the surveillance footage, which clearly showed all my movements before the snowstorm hit. "You've been watching me this whole time." Hearing this, the loli nodded while taking off her clothes. Seeing this, I was stunned and immediately asked her why she was undressing. She slowly said 2 words, "It's hot." She then continued to undress, so I quickly stepped in to stop her. After chatting for a bit, I found out she was monitoring me to see if there was a chance we could work together. So I asked her what kind of cooperation she meant. Hearing this, the purple-haired loli crawled over to my legs and started rummaging under the sofa. A moment later, she pulled out a generator and asked me to teach her how to use it. After my patient instructions, we got the generator running. I thought that was the end of it, but she came close again, pointing to something else, asking me to show her how to use the water heater. Then it was how to store food in the fridge, how to turn on the stove, and then how to cook. In the end, I ended up cooking dinner for us both. I slammed my hand on the table and said, "How did I become a full-time nanny? This girl has 0 life skills." I stuffed some food in my mouth, saying I'd leave right after eating. But there was no response. I looked back and saw she'd fallen asleep at the table. Can't believe she dozed off while eating. So I carried her to the couch. After tucking her in, I left with my clothes on. It felt just like taking care of a kid. Early the next morning, there was a knock at my door. It was the purple-haired loli from yesterday. She came to bring me supplies and asked me to show her how to use the generator again. Over the next few days, I realized this girl living upstairs was a total life idiot. But she seemed eager to learn life skills, so she dragged me to her place every day to teach her. Her cooking slowly improved, and after a while she finally managed to make a meal. Normally, her cooking would be so bad even a dog wouldn't eat it. But in this post-apocalyptic world, people would probably fight over it. Then I asked her name. She said she was called Evil King True Eye User. That Chinibu answer made me regret asking. I just quietly went back to eating. Meanwhile, chaos broke out in the underground parking lot. Everyone was fighting over supplies. That's when Jiang stepped in again, starting to brainwash all the homeowners. Don't you think it's ridiculous that you're beating each other up over these last few scraps? When they heard that, the other homeowners got pissed off too. They were like, you've got some nerve saying that. You're the one who suggested donating supplies, and all we got was one pack of instant noodles in days. We're gonna starve to death if we don't grab stuff. But Jiang shot back, well, it serves you right if you starve. You should think about who's really to blame for this mess. Then Jiang picked up the bread from the ground and started his speech. Those bread that used to cost a few bucks. The people with plenty of supplies jacked up the price to tens or hundreds. They even split it into fifths or tenths to auction off, just to squeeze every last penny out of you. In the end, they made a killing off this disaster. And you guys? You blew all your money on this food, then started fighting over the last scraps. Isn't that just ridiculous? Jiang was getting all worked up. He pointed out, the ones with more supplies who didn't donate. That's them. The ones who jacked up the prices. Also them. But who's starving to death? Us. How is that fair? Shouldn't we be banding together and taking back what's rightfully ours? Hearing Jiang's words, the homeowners got all riled up. They were like, why should they get all the good stuff while we starve? Then everyone started yelling about grabbing back their share of supplies. Seeing he'd whip them into a frenzy, Jiang smiled smugly. This way, he'd covered up how the residence committee had lied about the supplies, shifted the blame to the homeowners who had stuff but didn't share, and cemented his own leadership. Talk about killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Brotherly, who usually seemed the craziest, was actually clear-headed now. He thought to himself, these people are nuts. This is gonna be a disaster. Then he quickly grabbed his phone to message me. I was still sleeping in when Brother Lee's message woke me up. Bro, we're in deep shit. Those people have lost it. They're gonna raid for supplies. That Jiang guy is egging on the homeowners to go steal from others. They're breaking into houses one by one. When I got that message, I was wide awake in an instant. I jumped up and locked all the doors and windows. Brotherly warned me they were armed, so don't try to face them head on. I told him I got it and told him to be careful too. Even though I'd gotten a couple guns for emergencies, if it was an organized raid like this and they found out about my supplies, these crazy neighbors would strip me clean. So the most important thing now was to get prepared. Then I grabbed 2 fire extinguishers and a bundle of wires, thinking I'd make a makeshift security door. But just as I started hooking up the wires to the door, boom, the power in the whole neighborhood went out. I knew it was just a matter of time before the power went out, what with all the overloading and the crazy blizzard. Plus, all that snow and freezing temps meant no one could fix anything. So yeah, this blackout and internet outage might be for good. But hey, at least I was smart enough to get a generator and gas beforehand. I poured the gas into the generator and yanked the starter cord like my life depended on it. Gotta get this working ASAP. Once people realize the power's never coming back, all hell's gonna break loose. That's when the real nightmare begins. Meanwhile, Rue's over there scarfing down noodles while some guy brags about ripping off other homeowners by jacking up prices. He starts getting handsy with Rue, but she's totally into it. The guy's thinking, score. As long as I've got supplies, this chick's all mine. Suddenly, there's a commotion outside. The guy goes to check it out, but before he can, the door flies open. A bunch of shadowy figures with weapons are standing there. At the same time, I finally got the generator going, but no matter what I tried, I couldn't get power to the door. Then it freaking exploded. While I'm freaking out, someone knocks on my door. I peek through the peephole and see this purple ahogue. Turns out it's some purple-haired loli asking for help. I almost let her in, but then I get these flashes of getting murdered for opening the door. My hand just freezes on the doorknob. I tell her some homeowners are breaking in and stealing stuff, so she should go back. I'm not opening up. The poor kid hangs her head but doesn't leave. She just crouches by the door, shivering cause there's no heat. Then I hear footsteps. Looks like there are a few people home on the 18th floor. Whatever, let's hit 'em all. Turns out it's the neighbors rioting, coming to our floor with weapons. The loli who was by my door has vanished. Actually, I felt bad and brought her inside. This white-haired dude grabs a crowbar and says he's taking 2 apartments. He yells, anyone home? We're delivering supplies. I cover the loli's mouth so she doesn't make a sound. When no one answers, they start going crazy on the door. I whisper to her, don't worry, this door's reinforced. Then they start twisting the doorknob like maniacs, trying to break in. But it's not budging at all. They're shocked the door's so tough. They kick it for ages but can't even make a crack. They decide to mark it and try the neighbors instead. Man, am I glad I had the contractors add a 2-inch steel plate to the door and reinforce the handle during renovations. Suddenly I remembered something and almost forgot I was still covering someone's mouth. So I quickly let go. "You okay?" The loli sighed in relief, then bowed her head to thank me. By now it was quiet outside, so I immediately got down to fix the wires. "Once I get this thing working, next time they dare kick my door I'll electrocute them." The loli asked what I was doing. I said it's an electric defense system. "Oh, never mind, you wouldn't understand anyway." Hearing that, the loli explained it uses the difference in current and voltage. After cutting power, wrap exposed wires around the doorknob with insulation, connect the ground wire from the breaker box to the doorknob, then turn the power back on. I tried following her instructions and surprisingly it actually worked. I asked her puzzled how she knew all this. She said her evil eye of truth lets her see all truths of the world. I decided not to ask further and instead asked how I could help her. But she just dumped out a bunch of stuff hidden in her clothes, saying her evil eye would reside here now. Hearing that, I was shocked and immediately said that's not appropriate and tried to send her back. But I accidentally tripped on the wires and fell towards the coffee table. Weirdly, I didn't feel any pain and the table felt soft like jelly. Did that purple light make the table like this? I looked at my toolbox and grabbed a hammer. Sure enough, it also turned soft like jelly. But I kinda forgot there was someone else here. The loli was staring at me curiously. Are you also chosen by the evil eye?" I was taken aback, thinking this girl has some wild imagination. Feeling I could maybe fool her, I quickly said I'm also a minion chosen by the evil eye boss, so weird stuff happens to me sometimes. Hearing that, she reached out her hand saying fellow chosen ones should help each other, so we should share living space. Then she just ran into my room without waiting for my answer. Whatever, let her be. I have enough supplies stored for 2 people to eat for a lifetime anyway. The urgent thing now is to figure out how this purple light works. It appeared when I was about to hit the coffee table after tripping. So I tried recalling the feeling then and realized the condition for activating the light is feeling danger. Then I started experimenting with stuff in my house. Turns out anything touched by the purple light becomes soft like jelly, and the longer it's touched, the softer it gets. This made me feel a bit disappointed. I couldn't help feeling let down, thinking this ability is pretty useless. Suddenly, I had this crazy idea. What if I used the purple and green lights together? What would happen? I grabbed the floppy knife and yelled, "Release." Next thing I knew, the knife wasn't just back to normal, it was way harder than before. Turns out mixing those 2 lights can change how tough stuff is. Then it hit me, what if I did this to all the walls in my house? That'd be insane. Meanwhile, 2 homeowners who just finished looting were hanging out in the stairwell, trying to figure out what to do with their stolen goods. "Dude, you're not seriously gonna hand over everything we took, are you?" "No way, man. I barely have enough food as it is." As they were talking, some weird shit started happening. The walls started moving, and then suddenly there was a face in it, staring right at them. They freaked out, screaming "Ghost," and bolting down the stairs like maniacs. The face in the wall started warping. "Oh crap, I can't breathe." Turns out that face was actually mine. I used the purple light to soften the wall, then mixed in some green light. There was a loud bang, and boom, wall upgrade complete. I picked up a hammer to test out how tough it was now. I went to town on that wall for 2.5 hours straight, and I couldn't even chip the paint. Gotta say, I was pretty damn happy with the results. Over in the parking garage, the temporary homeowners committee was counting up all the stuff they'd stolen. Suddenly, someone grabbed the bearded guy's shoulder. Next thing he knew, the guy in the hat had him pinned to the ground. Turns out the bearded dude had been caught hoarding supplies. He was still trying to lie his way out of it, saying he'd only taken 1 bag and turned it all in. The hat guy wasn't buying it and was about to beat a confession out of him. That's when Jiang stepped in, asking the hat guy to let him go. "We can talk this out," he said. The hat guy hesitated but was still ready to throw down. Jiang kept his cool and said, "I got this, okay?" Hearing that, the hat guy let go. "You're lucky Jiang's here. I'm letting you off easy this time." Just then, Jiang reached out to check if the bearded guy was okay, flashing that fake-ass smile of his. The hat guy felt guilty after being saved, so he brought out all the food he'd been hiding. "I'm sorry, Mr. Jiang. My family has 5 people, and the rations we get just aren't enough. That's why I did this." Hearing this, Jiang gave the guy his own share for the day. He explained that rules are rules, everything collected must be turned in and then distributed based on family size. But he said he understood the guy's situation and told him not to do it again. This move not only won people over but also emphasized the importance of following the rules. Then Jiang told everyone to grab their supplies and head home. The twin brothers came up and asked Jiang how he got the Haggai to willingly hand over the supplies. Jiang just smiled and said he didn't really do much, just help the guy understand something. Conflicts arising from differing interests are countless. As long as they don't cause any impact, it's not a problem. He told the Haggai that if he broke the rules, he'd be seen as just a criminal, not part of the group. Forget about what might happen after the disaster, he'd have to worry about payback from the people he stole from before that. Everyone got the point. Lu puffed on his cigarette and said there's usually a leader guiding these riot groups. A leader emerges in chaotic times, he said. This kid's pretty sharp. Meanwhile, I was testing the reinforced glass with a hammer. I hit it hard but there wasn't even a scratch. The whole house was secured now, and I'd confirmed how strong it was. Just then, there was a knock at the door. I thought it might be neighbors coming for supplies, so I quietly went to check the peephole. It was Ru. Han Feng, it's me. I've been thinking the past few days. I can't ignore your feelings for me. If you don't believe me, open the door and see for yourself. Seeing this, I flashed back to being killed by them in my past life. She's saying the exact same thing as before, which means that guy is out there with her too. Realizing this, I ran to grab my gun from the table.